One of the most valuable lessons I've learned over the past decade in real estate is how essential it is to learn from the industry professionals. That's why I'm gathering professionals from across the country to share their experiences with you. This is a Gregerson's podcast, where experience and passion come together in the world of real estate. I'm Casey Gregerson, your host, and I'm very excited you're tuning into today's episode. As always, if you have questions for me or any of our guests, please reach out to me at casey@gregersonproperties.com. Now let's get started with today's podcast. Okay, guys, welcome into the Gregerson's podcast. Man, excited again for another guest today. I was going to talk about his professional NFL career and how he transitioned that into real estate and contrasting. I want to get in that post you shared the other day too, Devon. But anyway, Devon Kennard. So yeah, tell us about your kind of background, even like before you came to the NFL, and were you always kind of thinking about real estate, even like in this, growing up in high school and elementary? I mean, when did that start clicking?
I wouldn't say I was always thinking about real estate, but I always had a clear vision of what I wanted my life to look like. I remember I was in 7th grade and I was like, I won Student Athlete of the Week in basketball. And I said I wanted to go to USC for college and play in the NFL. And while I was in college, I wanted to graduate with my undergrad and master's degree. And, that's exactly what I did. So I was in, 7th grade and had a clear vision for what I wanted. And I feel like that just came from having a father who played in the NFL as well. And seeing his life a lot post-football gave me some perspective and made me realize that, like, all right, even if I have as successful as a career as he did, which he played 13 years professionally, I'm like, man, I'm going to have a lot of life, after the ball. So it gave me that perspective. And I always thought about, okay, how can I set myself up so I'm in a good position? And as I got older, that's where I started to really look into where I'm going to invest, how I'm going to invest. And it wasn't until I was in college and coming out of high school, I was a top recruit in the nation. And I got to college and it wasn't going too well. So that put me in a position where I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to make it to the NFL. And I kind of doubled down on, okay, if not the NFL, what I'm going to do. And that's where I kind of landed on real estate.
Man, Devon, that is so cool. I didn't realize that too, that your dad had played so long. You already talked about how it shaped you, but just kind of curious how growing up you saw him. Obviously, you were part of him and assume watching his career, and then how he made the transition. So I guess what did you initially learn from that transition when he made it from the NFL to after the NFL?
Well, I kind of took it upon myself at a young age to take responsibility of my life, in the sense of my father put my family in position to be successful. He didn't come from the best city. He grew up in Stockton, California. It was known for a lot of violence and trouble. And he got, us out of that situation and put us in a much better situation because of his NFL career. And I always felt like it was my duty and responsibility to take that baton and do more with my life and change my family's future just like he did. So having that, I wanted to stand on his shoulders, and he was always a giant to me. So it was always like, how can I do that more than anything? And that perspective kind of propelled me to where I'm at today.
Love it. That's just cool how it shapes you and how you had a plan. And not many people, even I wasn't thinking real estate back then or exactly fully planned out, right? But I'm curious, so did it kind of play into your major? Like I saw your communications major or communications management. So is that did you intentionally kind of decide that, go like figuring out what you were going to be doing post football?
No, when I got into college, it was more than anything like I wanted to pick a major that I felt like could apply to a lot of different things. I knew I could go the broadcasting route. I knew I liked business. So I didn't know exactly what major I should choose. But what I felt like a lot of guys made a mistake is they were changing majors and credits weren't counting. So I was like, what's a major that I feel like will apply to whatever I want to do so I can stick to it? Because I didn't want to choose sociology and then try to switch to business, and half the sociology classes didn't count. So my strategy going in was like, all right, communication, I think that will apply whether I become broadcast or, I'm a business person. The communication major and business management and the things that I'm going to learn, and I did learn, will apply to whatever I wanted to do. So it gave me leverage because I was able to stick with it, which allowed me to graduate faster, because sticking with my major, declaring right away, and passing all my classes put me on track to graduate in 3 years with my undergrad degree. And then I got my master's in a year and a half. So I'm one of the few players that was drafted in the NFL with the undergrad and master's degree already.
Wow. No kidding. I can imagine. What was your master's in, Devon?
Communication management, focused on like business and strategy.
Love it, man. Ironically, that was my undergrad was communications because I was similar to you. I'm like, I mean, I love sports. I love sports broad. I was like, I always wanted to be a sports broadcaster, right? But fortunately, I kept doing math classes and I majored in math while I was there, and that's what led to engineering. But anyway, it's kind of cool. It's funny how it works out, man. Cool, man. So yeah, so you had a master's going into it. Okay, so then yeah, kind of tell us about your kind of journey once you graduated from USC, kind of jumped into the NFL and what that looked like, and then yeah, we'll roll from there.
Yeah, my last year of college, going into the year, it didn't look like I was going to make it to the NFL. I dealt with a lot of injuries and position changes. So I met a mentor, in his office one day, and that was the meeting that I always say changed my business life forever, because it's a guy who was a police officer, and he started to buy properties. He was house hacking, bought one, turned to two, and at the time I met him, he owned over 5,000 units and managed over like 7 or 8,000 in LA. And I couldn't get over the fact, it was a couple things. One, he started off with a police officer salary, so I wasn't pocket watching. I don't know exactly how much you make, but you could kind of estimate of how much a police officer will make. And I'm like, you own thousands of units in LA and you started off with a police officer salary. So that gave me insight on, like, if he could do it, even if I didn't make it in the NFL, or if I only played like 1 or 2 years, it was going to put me in a position where I can do the same thing he did. So that, and then he was his own boss. I really thought it was cool that, I went into the meeting with the suit and tie trying to impress him. And this guy's in a sweatshirt and some sweatpants and, in this big office managing tons of people and dressing how he wants. So that kind of stuck out to me, where I wanted to put myself in a position of where I could go to work dressing how I want to.
Man, so cool. Isn't that funny how those little conversations and they're just pivoting or turning points in your life, right? You saw that because had you, like most other people, maybe they read Rich Dad Poor Dad, but had you like done much research or read many books on real estate at that point when you had that meeting?
I would say business and finance in general, but no, after that's when I, read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I dived all the way in, but I was already into like the financial space, business. I was really like interested in it, but that kind of gave me a lot of direction. And when I got into the NFL, my mindset was like, save as much as I can. I don't know how long I'm going to play. I want to put myself in a position where I have a nest egg so I can invest. So, my running story, and there's even a CNBC article from 2014 when I got drafted, but I brought out my 2007 Kia Sorento, and I drove that my whole rookie season in the NFL. I didn't change and get a different car until my second year, halfway through the year. And even then, I got a free car from a marketing opportunity with a Kia dealership, and it was after the CNBC article, like I became known as, oh, he's driving a Kia. And so my whole time, I either drove my 2007 Kia Sorento or a free Kia from Kia dealership locally. And I didn't buy my first vehicle until I got my second contract and went to the Detroit Lions. So, with that mindset of saving, I was just stacking as much money as I could, trying to be as frugal as possible. And I started investing right after my rookie season.
Man, I love it. That's exactly where I was going next, Devon, is how you managed the money and what you did once you started to have a high W-2 income. Man, that's so cool. So you started stockpiling it as much as you could. Like, initially, did you like start investing right away in real estate when you had that, or were you more just stockpiling for a couple of years and then started looking for opportunities? Or how did you manage that while you're playing in the league?
I started investing right away. So the first thing I did when I got in the league and started to collect some checks was, all right, I was asking guys in the locker room, and everybody was in the stock market. So I'm like, it felt like the thing to do. I got to get in. But one thing that bugged me about the stock market is, like, you have absolutely zero control, and it's up one day, down the next, and all the volatility. And there was no cash flow within it. So I'm like, man, I can't dictate. Like, my whole mindset was like, I want to be able to make enough money to pay for, my rent and pay for my car and like sustain my lifestyle. And I'm like, for me, the stock market wasn't helping me solve that problem. So it brought me back to real estate. I knew I wanted to get into real estate. And right after my rookie year, I went to a couple of meetups with friends of mine and met a guy who was flipping houses in Beech Grove, Indiana at scale. So a random city, but it attracted me because the properties were cheap. You're getting 3-bed, 2-bathroom house in good working neighborhoods for under $100,000. And I'm from Phoenix, and I went to college in LA, and I was playing for the New York Giants. So I'm used to 3 markets where you could get a pile of dirt for more than $100,000. So that's why I like found the Indiana market. I bought my first property, and I never looked back from there.
And who turned you on to the Indiana market and may help you find those deals?
So I went to a meetup and like one guy recommended me to another guy and ended up meeting a guy who was flipping on scale, but turnkey properties. So a big thing, my first property was turnkey because I'm playing in the NFL. I didn't want to have to worry about renovating a property and finding a tenant and doing all this stuff. So there was already a tenant in place. It was a good cash flowing, it was underwriting at like 8.5% cash on cash return at the time. And I was like, man, that's solid. It's going to appreciate. I'm going to hold for 5+ years. Really, my mindset was at the time was I'll hold forever. It's going to be worth $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 one day. All right, let's make this work. And yeah, I bought, and that's how it kind of led to more deals from there.
More, man, Devon, that is so cool. So we talk with a lot of people about turnkey, right? Because people who know that they want to eventually get big into real estate, or even if just want to get into it and own their own stuff, turnkey is such a powerful way. And it's hard, because real estate, there's a lot you have to learn. You can be really active and do it all yourself, but there's also a lot of expensive lessons you can learn, right? So it sounds like you went in, did the turnkey model. You were busy, because I think so many people can relate to this, right? You were busy trying to do everything you could to probably extend your career in the NFL, be all in there, right? But just like some people are focused on their W-2, it's like turnkey is such a powerful, powerful way to do it. But any other comments on turnkey?
Yeah, well, I would say I became an expert at figuring out how to invest passively. And it's very interesting because if you're active on social media and watching YouTube videos, the trends kind of go on the other way of like a lot of investors saying there's no such thing as passive and you have to be an active investor and passive is fleeting. And all these people on social media who are talking about passive investing don't know what they're talking about. They're lying to you. And it's like, I understand why they are saying that, because it can be an active investment, but I didn't have the luxury of looking at it any other way than passive. So it wasn't like, do I invest actively or passively? It's like, how do I invest when I don't have time and I need to focus on my career? I got to figure out, but I want to invest in real estate. What are the avenues to do so? So buying turnkey was a great segue for me in figuring that out. And in certain markets, the numbers still made sense and still do today. You could still make it make sense, especially when you have a long-term horizon and you're building in revenue somewhere else. This is more wealth accumulation as well as, tax benefits, cash flow, etc. So I think it's perspective and understanding what your goals are and what your life's going to be looking like.
Wow. I want to dive deeper into how you've really mastered, or really you were thoughtful about how to invest passively and how other people can. But yeah, I want to highlight too what you said about turnkey in the long horizon, right? Like it is easy to mess up a flip and go negative or lose money on a flip, right? But if you buy a turnkey or buy and hold asset, and you have that long-term horizon, it's a very hard game to lose, right? You still can, but the odds are in your favor to not lose, right? Versus fix and flip. Tell me more about the passive, like how you felt comfortable being passive and how you managed that, right? To where you were, again, you had a busy W-2 or busy career, but you were able to get in passively. A, how did you feel comfortable? And B, how did you continue to do it? And how can other people do it?
Well, I would say there's like 4 steps. There are 4 things you really need to do. And one is increase your spread. So for me, increasing your spread means how much you earn, how much you spend, that amount of money in between is your spread. How do you increase that more and more? So for me, that's why I was driving a Kia Sorento for so long, because I wanted to increase my spread as much as you can. 2 is knowledge. So it's hard to invest even passively if you don't understand. So I related, if I give you a football playbook right now, I played for 4 different organizations in the NFL. Most of it would look like gibberish, but once you understand the language, what it looks like, all of that, then it's like you can identify things really easy. Oh, that's a cover 3 defense. Oh, that's this route concept, et cetera, et cetera. So gaining the knowledge on understanding the language of real estate investing and really investing overall, because there's so much overlap between real estate investing and business in general and stock market. They just call certain things differently. But once you understand one, it's easy to understand the others. So I say that's, knowledge is a huge thing. And then it's building a system and a team. So a system for me is like, okay, I got property management, making sure I set guidelines on how often they're reporting to me and the reporting I'm getting. And if there's a repair, is there a limit on how much they could do without notifying me and all of those? And then as far as systems, it's like, okay, how am I keeping track of making sure I received the income the property manager was supposed to send to me, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say if you could do those 4 things, which is increase your spread, gain the knowledge, build the team, and build the system, system, then passive investing is easy. But I don't think a lot of people kind of identify what passive investing means. So I'd like to dive a little bit into that. And for me, I've identified it like while I was playing as putting 5 hours or less of time in a week. And that's passive to me. Everybody should have their own definition based on their lifestyle, but I can show you my football schedule and it's packed. I can devote 5 concentrated, focused hours to my real estate or investing in my finances a week. And if it doesn't fit within that, if it's not going to stay within 5 hours, it's an investment I probably shouldn't consider. So I always recommend people clarify what passive means to you, because for me, it might mean something different than it does to you. So identify that, and that's become super helpful.
Man, that is gold, Devon. Figure out the passive amount. That's just a great way to put it, because yeah, passive means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. If you define it, then you can be intentful about it. Man, yeah, I think that's genius. And those 4 steps, man, I love the 4 different things, because you really built upon it, right? And people don't expect you can do all 4 of those like initially, right? But it sounds like you kind of building blocks, right? Initially your spread, getting the spread down, and then you could start to build out your education, right? They could be doing that now. The team and like the processes all come later.
It comes together. And when you're talking about turnkey stuff, the team and the process is kind of laid out. So that's why it's a great place to start, because you learn about, when you're dealing with a turnkey provider, they kind of walk you through the process. So now I could work with turnkey providers, but I can also execute the process myself, because I know what I need to be able to invest passively. And you need your core 4. You need a contractor, you need a property manager, you need your deal finder, and you need a lender. If you got those four people in place, you can be your own turnkey provider essentially. And that's what I've, grown into and realized over time. So, once you understand that's the knowledge piece. And then that helps you determine, okay, what's my team look like and what's my process and strategy look like.
Man, another good point. Because again, yeah, going turnkey, or if you try to go buy it, you got to find all those people. Find the lender, find the construction guy, find the repair guy, find the property manager, right? You got to go find all those. Or you can go turnkey, let them bring them all to you. And then, like you say, you don't have to do it turnkey the rest of your career, but it's just a great building block.
Yeah, it helps you realize who and what you need, and then it kind of clarifies it. You get used to the process, and you could take off from there. But I've learned how to leverage turnkey providers. So, I've done good work with some turnkey providers. So now that I'm willing to build out my own team or do things a little differently, I'm like, hey, you have the system you're finding tons of deals. If there's deals that I could take off your hand before you renovate them, pay you a little assignment fee, and use your team. So I'm keeping your team, their pockets filled. You get an assignment fee, but I get to keep more meat on the bone because I'm handling the renovation. It could still be passive to me because your team is used to this process. It's just me doing it instead of you. And like, that's how I've been able to take advantage of relationships I already have with turnkey providers and grow into, okay, I can burr or I can flip or I can do any kind of strategy on my own, leveraging the relationships I've met through turnkey providers.
Man, that's a super interesting one, Devon, because it's like, and I guess to add a little bit more to that, you're willing, because yeah, we're a turnkey provider, right? But we've also looked at that option where somebody else, ultimately you as the end buyer, you could take on a little bit more risk, take on a little bit more management. But I agree, as a turnkey provider, it's still very beneficial for us. And we could take down more deals that way, right? To where we could hand them off to you, because we found that there's more deals often than, at least in our market, there's more deals than we could take down. But again, it requires somebody who's got the capital, somebody who's willing to take some risk on it. That's ultimately, you're getting more upside, right? Because you take a little more risk.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But you got to think about it. So if you're a turnkey provider and you're dealing with an investor who you might end up starting to slowly lose because they want to participate in more of the upside of the deal, you lose them completely, or you can offer them this opportunity to where it's like, hey, I'm getting 100 deals a month, just throwing a number out there. I'll slide you 2 or 3 of them, charge you an assignment fee, but there's still some meat on the bone. And if you don't mind, you like how we manage, you like my contracting team, you like, the team I have in place, still use them. Now it's mutually beneficial, and you're still benefiting from that client. So I think there's ways to make that work on both ends. That makes a lot of sense. And that's how I kind of approach turnkey providers now when I'm looking for more leverage, more opportunity, and more upside in a deal.
I wasn't planning to go there, but I'm going to go deeper on that. So, how did you make that transition for a turnkey buyer to starting to approach people and have the confidence to do it? Other than you talked about like knowing the systems and getting introduced into it, but what else did you do to feel confident to make that leap?
Over the years of learning what the system was like and thinking about it, and then it's like, all right, I just need my core four team, and I could go to a random market, Arkansas, and I could go out there and try to find out who the best contractor is and who's going to be my deal finder that's bringing me deals or whatever. But I just honestly started to think about it, and it's like, if I like one of the markets I invest in is Kansas City. If I like Kansas City, my turnkey provider that I've worked with out there has done good for me over the years, but I want more upside in deals. Like it's just a conversation. Like, hey, like probably going to end up losing me because I want to find a market that I'm gonna be able to keep profiting from more than I am with you, or I can keep investing in your market. Can you slide me some deals? So it just made sense, and realizing who you need on that team, and if you're confident in the team that's already in place, then I think that gives you a lot of leverage. But I will say, from an investor standpoint, one thing that I think about that I like to cover myself on is really diving in and like, okay, I need backups in case, like, okay, who else can I get deals from? Who else can potentially be my property manager? Who else can potentially be the contractor? Because you never want to depend on, when you're building your team, if you're dependent on one person for each role, then if they start slacking, you're stuck. So I like to have at like, my starter and my guy coming off the bench at least. But if I could have 2 to 3 people at each position that I could potentially call on, that gives me safety. So that's how I kind of build it out and think about it. But yeah, I don't think it's that complicated. People need to kind of realize that that's all you have to do, even if you're trying to invest passively. And it's not that the workload's not that much more.
Love it. Yeah, I call it single point failure. You've got backups. That's so smart, Devon. Okay, one thing though, and I guess just somebody might be asking this, right? They're like, hey, man, okay, I bought Turnkey or I want to buy Turnkey, but eventually I want to do what Devon is doing, but I don't maybe have the financials and the capital saved and all that as you do. But what would you say to those people to be able to make that transition again from being a turnkey buyer to, hey, I actually want to participate and I want to build some equity on this deal? Like, what would you say capital wise they would need to have ready to go? I know it's market dependent, but how would you answer that?
Well, I mean, if you don't have a ton of capital on hand, there's a lot of markets like that's why I started in the Midwest. I think there's tons of Midwest markets where you can buy affordable properties, but that's why in the four things that we talked about earlier, increasing your spread is so important, because if you're going to properly invest in real estate, you need some level of capital, or it's better. I wouldn't say you need, but it's better if you have some capital to play with. So that's one, is increase your spread and go to a market that's cheaper and more affordable, be the two things. But the third thing is there's a lot of people doing it with little to no money by leveraging private lenders and using OPM, which is just other people's money. So now that you go to a turnkey provider and you're getting more built-in equity because you're going to do it yourself, you can leverage that even more and start to be like, okay, I'm going to use other people's money because I have equity in the deal now, to where I can refinance, pay them back, and play the game. Now, in full transparency, that's a little tough with interest rates where they're at now, but there are people who are still making that work. They're using OPM in certain markets and buying deals, paying their private money lenders back, putting on fixed debt, and kind of chugging along with using little to none of their money. So figuring out the financing component is what will help you unlock all of that.
Man, good stuff. So we went deep on the passive investing in turnkey, which I think was perfect, right? But I want to back up a little bit to where, Devon, how did you go from, so initially you were buying turnkey deals, sounds like next transition was a little bit doing the turnkey yourself. But I'm curious, kind of as your NFL career played out and as you exited the NFL, how all that's transitioned and what that looked like.
Yeah, so I love talking about this stuff because people who do have 9 to 5 jobs and are in the position I'm in, like, I want to be able to help them figure out like the best avenues to invest passively. So we dove really hard into turnkey, and then how you can convert that into even more potentially just now. But I think it's important to like identify a couple of other ways to invest passively that people miss sometimes. And that's through syndications, private lending, and triple net leases and commercial deals. So those are the 4 ways. So you got core four buy and hold through a turnkey provider or on your own. You have syndications, you have private lending, and you have triple net leases. Those are the four ways that I've identified throughout my NFL career that I can keep the main thing, which is NFL and football, while also building a real estate empire. So it's like, how do you excel at work but build a real estate empire? You invest passively, and I found that those are four great vehicles. They're not the only, but they're great vehicles that you can use to do so.
Yeah, those are four great ones, especially passively. Cool. And then how have you kind of evolved from when you did leave your career, NFL career, and you were ready to go full-time real estate? And I would assume you knew exactly what you were doing as soon as you left, or what did that transition look like?
Yeah, I mean, even now, I would say I'm still a passive investor, but what passive looks like has changed a little bit. Like now, I'm willing to put in 20 hours a week. I still want to do something. I still want to work 4 to 5 hours a day, and maybe I'll take at least one day off a week. So I still want to be able to. I want to be able to work a little bit more because this is all that I'm doing now. But I don't want a full 40, 50, 80-hour work week. So for me, I'm able to put a little more time, which allows me to grow my portfolio, do more things. And that transition, I feel like I've kind of prepared myself for and put myself in position to like, all right, now football's phasing out. I got more time on my hands. I don't want to go from 5 hours a week to 80 hours a week, but I am willing to go 20 or, between 20 and 30 hours a week. So what does that look like and what things that I'm doing and how I've kind of solved that for myself is, all right, I'm going to invest more actively, building relationships, picking markets, looking for deals. That's one. And then two, I want to solve the cash flow problem. And I've identified private lending as a great source for me to be able to do that using my own capital, bank capital, as well as providing other investors a return on their money by lending through my company and coming to, investors who are looking for private money and lending to them and, being able to help them, but also get a good cash on cash return on my investment.
Yeah. Let's talk about that one, where the way you've gotten comfortable lending money, right? Because you've obviously understood the deals, but what would you kind of share with other people who maybe want to go that route to where they just want to be a private money lender, but maybe they don't quite have the level of experience that you have and the knowledge. And I'm curious how you actually underwrite deals and what you do to kind of make sure you're setting yourself up for success.
I'll say the first thing you should consider is obviously I always kind of start with like it goes back to the spread, knowledge, system, and team. So spread, you got to increase the spreads, the knowledge. Now we're talking about lending. So what's the knowledge you need to know? A lot of it is crossover between just regular investing. And I've identified aggressive underwriters and people who are taking on too much risk versus, like I know I'm risk averse and I like conservative underwriting. So when I'm looking at somebody who's asking for money and it's like, you're looking at the deal and it's like, man, this spread is kind of thin, or they're doing a flip and they're counting on three months of holding costs when in a lot of markets it's going longer than that now. I would like to see underwriting for 6 or more months potentially. Like, so those are the type of things that I would look for. But to start with the knowledge as well is I actually read a good book that got me kind of good headway and that's Lend to Live. It's a Bigger Pockets book by two ladies that talk about it, and they build a lot of the foundation. And then from there, it's building relationships with people who are already having success, not lending, but flipping properties and investing in real estate. So for me, it's like, man, all right, I know these people who are really good at flipping and they've had a ton of success. Are they willing, are they looking for more capital? And if I like how they've done, I've watched from afar, I've seen some of their deals, man, I'll lend to you, and you win, I win. It's mutually beneficial, and we could build a long-standing relationship. So that's kind of how I've built it. I've been able to identify some investors who I think are conservative in their underwriting and have a good track record, a good reputation, and can I lend to you and help you execute on your plan while also get a good return for myself.
Yeah, man. Love it. Love it. Okay, I got another one too for you. I wanted to ask this one. So, coming from your career in the league, you're always wanting to be an impact player, right? You're on the team, you want to have an impact on the team. Now, how have you kind of like, now that you're in real estate and you're doing that, again, more so passively than some people? By the way, I love that. I want to dive deeper on that in a second. But now that you're an impact player in real estate, like how do you continue to be a part of teams and really have an impact, whether that's on your team or other people's teams or just in your network?
Yeah, I would say the biggest impact I'm trying to make is becoming like known for being an athlete investor. I want to help more athletes, aspiring, current, and former athletes invest. I feel like we have so much leverage that is not fully tapped into. And it's because we don't understand the language of investing. We don't understand the game. And it's no different than learning our sports. So, it's like outside of my own portfolio and stuff, I'm starting to put more information out, more education out, and build. And, I got some stuff in the works on what I'm building out because I want to help more athletes figure out how to invest, especially in real estate, and take care of themselves. Because you always hear about the big names. You see Tom Brady just retired and he's investing in this team and that team. But man, there's so many guys who maybe made a couple million while they were playing, and it sounds like a lot of money, but it got to last them the rest of their lifetime. If I could reach those guys, teach them how to invest, how to look at it, how to leverage the capital they built, and put them on a trajectory like how we started. I was talking about my mentor who was a police officer. That's what I want to help people do, and that's kind of within my portfolio how I want to start to help people.
Love it. Well, that's a great segue. I wanted to hear, too, about your book that you recently wrote. Tell us about that one, Devon.
Yeah, my book is It All Adds Up, Designing Your Game Plan for Financial Success. And honestly, I wrote the book with the idea in mind that, every finance book and real estate book I've read, it's mostly by middle to late age white guys, to be honest. And I'm I feel like me being a professional athlete, I can reach a different demographic, and I have a passion for it. And I could have waited till I was 40, 50 years old and I knew even more than I knew now. But I thought it was important to write it as while I was a current player, fresh out of the NFL, and I can connect with a larger audience. And I put my face on the front of the book because I wanted people all over the country as minorities to be like, whoa, this is, a Black athlete writing about finance and the importance of it, and how what he did, how I can translate it into something that I can do, and, give them a different perspective because I think I can access more people that way. So that was my passion. All the books and all the concepts I've learned from people like Tony Robbins and Robert Kiyosaki and Suze Orman and Dave Ramsey and all these finance and real estate gurus. It's like, all right, how can I gather all the information I've learned and translate that into a way that can relate to more people? And that's what It All Adds Up is all about.
Man, that's cool. And I'm with you. Well, it makes total sense, right? But I'm curious, what's the response been like? Because I'm with you. That demographic, I feel like they could relate to you right then. So what's the response been like since writing the book?
It's been incredible. I'm working with the NFL and NFLPA to get it to a lot of players throughout the league. I went on a book tour and I was speaking at nonprofit organizations and high schools, working with them and getting it in front of middle school and high school kids. Because, I think once you understand the importance of investing, the importance of finance, you stop thinking it's optional, especially in this day and age. If you're just ignoring your finances, you're behind the 8 ball. So helping youth and people realize that, so to change their trajectory, I think is really important. And the feedback on it so far has been incredible.
Man, it's cool stuff. Well, another thing, so you talked about that you are still, and again, I would agree, if you're spending 20 hours a week, first off, what does that look like you're investing now? And then with that other time you have, I'm curious what else you do other than maybe the writing the books, and what else are you up to?
I'll work a few hours a day, making sure I check my emails, and overseeing the finances. I just hired a bookkeeper who's going to help me a ton because I've been kind of just winging it or using systems and software, but not on top of my books as much as I could. So, getting her acclimated and on board and getting that all the way ironed out. And then a lot of the educational content and the things I'm going to be rolling out in the coming weeks and months, been working on that. And beyond that, man, it's been a lot of family time. I want to make sure, turned off from work by 3:30 or 4 o'clock, and I'm full kid mode. I got 2 young girls at home, so they're getting off school, they get a little homework done, and then dad's taking them to the park or we're going to some type of activity. I want to be very active in my kids' lives, especially considering all the time I spent away while I was playing. So being able to do that and still work out consistently, it's been great, man.
Oh, that's so cool. Definitely envious in that to where you've built something that is so passive. Like mine's very active. and I do enjoy it, but I'm envious of that. And I do try to still make that time at the end of the day. It's a big part of my life is my boys and being able to coach them and be with them. But it's a grind, or it's not a grind. It's just a very busy day up until 4 o'clock. But man, cool. So where are you going from here, Devon? Like are you going to continue to be those core four as far as syndications, private money, buying actually long-term rental properties in the private lending?
Yeah, so I think I'll focus on, building out my core four teams in different markets and continuing to buy deals in the private lending. I think those will too, as I'm in a ton of syndications throughout the last decade that I've gotten into, but as those fully mature and I get my money back, I'm probably going to start to put that capital more into my own deals because I have a little more time, I understand more, and I feel like I have the resources and the connections to be able to do it myself without having to do it through a syndication. But I think I'll be focused on that, and between the lending and building out my own portfolio, I think my hands will be full.
Absolutely. Especially how intentful you are about the time you do spend on it. And I'm sure the return, I mean, again, you started early, you built it up and you had a strong W-2 income to really propel it. Man, it's really cool. Cool stuff what you've done, man. Oh, last thing I was going to ask is on the balance between syndication, because I've talked to a lot of investors that are kind of in maybe they're doing one or the other, but you're doing both. But the blend of the syndication, which like you said, it's a long-term outlook. It's going to pay out in 5, maybe 10 years versus the private money lending. I assume those are maybe shorter term, 3, 6, 12 months. But how have you kind of blended those together?
Yeah, I think they serve completely different purposes because there's no upside with the private money lending. So that is, all right, I want a good return on my money in a year or less, essentially. Most of my loans are a year or less. The syndications, depending on the structure and the type of deal it is, there's usually some type of pref. Like a standard deal is 8% pref. So you're going to get 8% annually. Now, whether that's actually paid, the ones that pay, from the get-go, that's pretty much 2% a quarter. But some of them, they have to remodel the whole apartment complex, for instance. So you're not going to get that right away. But after a few years, they'll start back paying you and you'll get an 8% pref annually. And then, when the deal closes, say they sell it or refinance, you get your capital back plus a 70-30 split of the profits. Now, what a lot of people don't like about syndications is there's a good amount of fees baked into syndications. Now, one, being smart about the syndications you're getting into to where they're lean and they're not oversaturated with too many fees, but two, I feel like it's the cost of doing business. They're doing everything. Literally, you're underwriting the deal, putting your money into it, and then you can get an 8% pref. And when the deal sells or refinance, you're talking anywhere from 16% to 30 plus, depending on the deal, percent return, over the lifespan of the deal. So I feel like it serves a purpose because you get all the upsides of real estate still. You get, I get K1s and they show losses sometimes. That helps me. So you're actually owning the real estate and you get the upside. When lending, there's no upside outside of the return you're going to get.
Love it. You reminded me of another one that I said at the beginning. I loved your recent post comparing active income when you were in the NFL versus active income as a real estate investor. Talk a little bbit more about that and how because I assume you're keeping a lot more money in your pocket now.
Yeah, I mean, I really ran the numbers, and like if you're making $1 million in the NFL versus $1 million in real estate, the difference is hundreds of thousands of dollars because of taxes. Because in the NFL, we're taxed in the highest tax bracket, and like when I was playing for the Cardinals the last couple of years, I was paying 44% taxes, and that's not including a 3% agent fee on top of that, which is off of gross revenue as well. So you could pretty much say 50% is gone from taxes, and as you probably know, in real estate, that's just not the case. So, you're able to pocket a lot more of the money and it's not treated equally. So, I'm like, man, once I get to the point where I can make NFL league minimum in passively investing through all the different ways we talked about today, I'm going to be able to make just as much as I was or just as much as I could in the NFL, but keeping more, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, man, that's just such a cool point and a lot of wealthy people have figured this out, right? But there's a ton of people out there, I think, still that have such a great W-2 income, but they don't realize what they're leaving on the table or what they're giving to the IRS because they don't have real estate assets that are helping write that off. Was that I'm just curious your perspective on that and how you kind of help people or like, how do people really go do that, right? So let's say you're a guy making $1 million. It doesn't have to be that. Say it's $500,000 a year in a really well-paying W-2 job, but they're paying 40% tax rate. Like, how does that person get into the game? And you've talked a lot about it, so I want you to kind of summarize, but how does that person get in and start getting those write-offs to where he's not paying so much to the IRS?
I mean, a good example is what we were talking about. Like if you create an LLC and you buy turnkey properties, and you're writing off a lot of the things you're doing through your business now in your LLC, you can start to write off a lot of things that you're probably already spending money on. Yeah, because now we're talking about some of your transportation needs with your car. Now you're talking about, can you write off a portion of your house because that's your office for your real estate business. Now we're talking about restaurants, and sometimes you go to dinner. That's a business dinner and relationship. And obviously in all this, you need to talk to your accountant. But those are the type of things that I'm able to write off nowadays because, hey, I really do have a dinner, and he might be a buddy of mine, but he's the deal finder in the Arizona market where I live, and we're having dinner and I paid for it, and I'm going to use my business credit card. That's a dinner I probably would have had anyways because this is a buddy of mine, but now I'm able to write it off through the business. So being able to structure that differently and just add that layer just by having an LLC, which typically costs less than $1,000 to start and get running, but you can start to write off a lot of the things that you probably would already do.
Yeah, 100%. So if you combine that and then obviously just buying, so you're not going to get the same benefits as Devon talked about. You could be a private money investor, or you could be in part of a syndication or buy turnkey. But if you do the syndication or the turnkey, that's when you're going to be able to get the depreciation of the properties, right? And be able to actually offset a lot of that income.
So yes, I always tell guys, like, the long-term play is buying properties or investing in syndications. But when you're trying to replace a certain level of your income and get a good, solid, most likely double-digit return, that's where the lending comes into place, because that puts you in a position to be able to earn more capital, to reinvest, for like, you could private money lend, for a couple years, like make enough money for down payment on a property and do that every 2 years, for instance. So, that's just the perspective, but full transparency, you're going to pay taxes on that income. That's adding income. So it's like, you got to balance it out with the other strategies as well.
Yeah, I love it. It's all about, like you said from the start, build that spread, right? You're using the private money to build your spread to continue stockpiling that cash. Then you can go in and start taking the bigger, not necessarily bigger risk, but taking the bigger shots that are going to really pay off big in the long term. Man, Devon, it's been good stuff today, man. I'll wrap it up with where could people find you, and anything else you want to leave us with, especially inspiring people, because I think not everyone maybe talks about doing it, but they don't necessarily actually take action and invest passively. And you've given so many good ways that they could do it today, but I'll let you take us off of that.
Yeah, I'm super passionate about people who enjoy working, or they have a job that they don't want to leave, they will never leave. And I want to encourage you out there to start investing, and specifically in real estate. I think it's a great vehicle. And even if you love your job and you don't want to leave for the next 30 years, you can't tell me that having an extra $1,000, $2,000 a month coming in passively that takes 5 hours or less, if you're someone like me, that wouldn't be beneficial to you, your life, and your family. And all it takes is increasing your spread, gaining the knowledge, building the team and the system. So I want to encourage you guys to go do that. And you can find me at Devon Kennard on all social media and www.devonkennard.com. And make sure you go order my book. It all adds up.
Yeah, awesome. And more books coming down the pipe, right? Keep an eye out for those.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully by the end of the year, I'm announcing another book, but stand by on that one.
Awesome. That's an exciting step. Well, thank you so much, Devon, for coming on. Gave our audience a ton of gold nuggets, ton of ways to invest passively, ton of ways to take the transition from passive to being a little bit more active. Man, good stuff today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man.
As you may have learned by tuning into this episode of Gregor Sense, the easiest way to make real estate investing hard is by going at it alone. So as you continue learning and seeking knowledge of the industry, I want to encourage you to build relationships with other professionals who are passionate about real estate. Whether that's an agent, a business owner, or a managing investor like myself, there are pros that want to see you succeed and are willing to help you by sharing their experience. You can always reach me by visiting CaseyGregerson.com and scheduling a call. I look forward to connecting with you and continuing to share my experience with you here on Gregor Sense Mobile. Until next time, I'm Casey Gregerson. Thanks for tuning in.